Welcome everyone to an all new Deep Cuts Live. I'm your host, Antoine Reid, and we're here with a first timer, which always makes me super excited. But we have Alex Weghorn here with us from Davidoff. So I've actually been following him on social media for what feels like forever. It feels like forever for a lot of people, but I've seen you in clips talking about Davidoff with other people, and I just had one of those old people senior moments where I was like, he hasn't been on Deep Cuts. We need to have him on and talk about some Davidoff stuff. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure. This has been a great experience getting into. I still feel like I'm not only new to Davidoff, but I even still feel like I'm new to the industry. I've been in it for a little over 7 years now, I think it is. So, but I still feel like I'm kind of new to everything and everyone. So it's nice to be able to get a chance to sit down and have some really cool conversations with some amazing people around the industry. And I've been really excited about Deep Cuts Live because I've been following along and was lucky enough to be talking with you on Instagram. And I think we both had the light bulb go off at the same time. We're like, you know what? We should probably record at some point in time.
Exactly. Yeah. It's funny because I tell my mom all the time about how much work gets done on Instagram. And she's like, I never knew you could use Instagram like that. I was like, no. I was like, especially for our industry, I feel like people get so much work done. Like, I don't know about you, but I get contacted on there about work stuff, about questions they may have about different things. And I'm like on there throughout the day. I turned off my notifications because they were driving me crazy, but I do pop in throughout the day, and especially at night I'm on. But it's like it's a pretty serious platform to get work done. I told her, I was like, it's pretty necessary these days.
And it's evolved so quickly. It's interesting because social media in general, but especially in this case Instagram, it feels like with the evolution of social media and different platforms, it actually has now, the way it's being utilized, especially in our case, has also forced the cigar industry to maybe evolve a little bit more quickly than it otherwise would have as well. Because tradition is a big thing, right? And a lot of times, be it manufacturers, be it retailers, be it consumers, like to kind of do the same thing over and over again, it seems like. But then when you have that forced evolution, and really helps push innovation at a faster pace. So I think everybody has benefited, not only the ability to reach out and have a little bit more touch points with each other within the industry, but also from an innovation standpoint and kind of pushing marketing and maybe even blends to some extent. So, and even just the community of consumers being able to have friends from around the world you've never met before, but everybody is attached, and you have that common theme, that common thread of the cigar, and that question that builds so many relationships and friendships, which is, what are you smoking?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So you said a lot of things that kind of triggered all these different questions, but I'm gonna pace myself with questions. I'm gonna start off like we usually start off Deep Cuts. So we start off with an icebreaker question. So for you, and this kind of comes from like a book I was reading a couple months ago, but I had this question for you about, what's your cigar smoking alter ego? Like, who do you become when you start smoking? Are you still Alex, or do you kind of imagine yourself becoming someone else?
Wow. To be honest, I don't think I've ever thought of it in that way. That is a pretty interesting question. I would say at most, and I am certainly not trying to come across as I am making a direct comparison, so I don't want it to be interpreted this way. But I guess I might try to find a way to channel my inner Zeno Davidoff.
Okay.
I guess is a way to look at it, mainly because I would say I really focus on the importance of the cigar, especially when I have the chance to be sitting by myself and enjoying a cigar. Like so many of us, I enjoy cigars very socially. Um, so a lot of those other things kind of take precedence of the environment and the context of the conversation and just your overall enjoyment. But if I have the ability to be by myself and paying attention to the cigar and trying to get as much out of it, paying attention to the experience I'm getting from the cigar and I'm enjoying with intent, I would say I guess I could be trying to channel my inner Zeno, because that's really what he was all about, and that's what Time Beautifully Filled really meant to him, was making sure that everything that goes into this cigar is appreciated, making sure that nothing else is bothering you when you're enjoying that cigar. It is that ritual. It's the relationship with the experience, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess my alter ego would be just maybe trying to channel my inner Zeno to some extent.
That's a good response.
I like that question.
There's a whole book, and I don't want to get too much into it, but there's a whole book about alter egos, and basically this guy who works in the sports world
Okay.
basically coaches these different athletes who usually have like some type of issue that's like holding them back from performing. And so he comes up, so his whole idea is like, you got to come up with a alter ego. Like, so and so, like if you're just thinking about yourself, you're probably a certain way. So if if you're shy or introvert, then you have to create this alter ego that's out there. He gave like examples of basically like Beyonce coming up with Sasha Fierce because she's accustomed to performing in churches and doing a certain type of music, and then having to obviously come out of that realm and then needing to perform in a
Right.
completely different way. So it was a really simple concept, but at the same time interesting to read about. Just the whole idea of the alter ego to help
Yeah.
propel yourself forward.
The psychology behind it. I
Definitely.
mean, in enjoying cigars, there is such a psychological component to it, right? I mean,
Mhm.
a lot of times people are using it as that time for meditation. Um, so it's a very cerebral, or it can be a very cerebral lifestyle, hobby, experience, whatever the case is for the individual. Um, so yeah, there's a lot more psychology behind it. You're not just smoking a cigarette or a vape or an e-cig, something like that, and you're just trying to get that hit of whatever it is. It's okay, this is cathartic. I'm sitting down, kind of trying to process my stuff for the day or the week, however often I'm enjoying a cigar. And yeah, the cerebral aspect behind cigar enjoyment is significant and should not be downplayed at
Definitely.
all. Yeah. Yeah.
So since this is your first time on the show and people may be saying like we want to get to know you a little bit more, how did you get into the whole cigar world?
I would say uh, I definitely like to believe that luck is when preparedness meets opportunity. So I started on the retail side in the beginning. I was actually working as a tobacconist at a cigar bar here in St. Petersburg, Florida. Shout out to Central Cigars and Ruby's Elixir in downtown St. Petersburg. Just celebrated their 29th year. They just had their 29th anniversary. But I started there in April of 2018. And I wasn't getting fulfillment out of the job I had at the time. I was in a corporate gig, actually working for a health food company, and just really wasn't getting the same type of personal satisfaction that I had been when I was first starting. So I was already a regular there. I'd been going there for a couple of years. And one of the great things about the clientele there is you do truly feel like your family, especially when you're working there and you get to see all the regulars showing up. And this is a story that is copy paste repeated all across the country and the world. That community is very, very strong. So I had actually gone to a bourbon event. I am originally from Bourbon County, Kentucky. Moved down to the Tampa Bay area in 2000, but that night there happened to be a Woodford Reserve event. I was from Kentucky. I am from Kentucky. Bourbon from Kentucky. The liquor rep there that night was from Kentucky. And you have Central Cigars, the cigar bar. Then you have Ruby's Elixir, the live music venue. The drummer from the band that night, also from Kentucky. So Kentucky, everything. Take a picture, post it on social media, tag Central and Ruby's. They didn't have all that much of a social media presence at that time. So I had the idea of maybe I could pitch social media services to the owner, Greg Haddad, and he says, no. So he was saying that he was not going to be able to pay me what I was asking to do only his social media. But if I wanted to become a tobacconist, get on the other side of the register and have a couple shifts a week, then I could do the social media on top of that for a little bit of a pay bump. So that's how I actually got started in the cigar industry as a whole. Was a tobacconist for a year, and then unexpectedly and unfortunately, the previous GM passed away. So at that time in June of 2019, I actually took over as general manager. So I was there as the GM for 3 years before Lana Fraser reached out to me on a Saturday morning, shot me a text and said, hey, are you or anybody you know interested in a position like this? And it's not something you say no to, definitely. But I also had only been in the industry for 4 years at that time. And I'm like, well, I'll interview as many times as I can and see where it goes. But they'll probably find somebody more qualified or had been more experienced. But one interview turned into two and turned into getting an offer letter. So here I am. Started in actually May 31st of 22 was my first day with Davidoff. So a little over 3 years, coming up on 4 years now, actually. So it kind of just happened that way. But I've been enjoying cigars for 21 years. This is my 21st year. Okay. So I just always thought I was going to be a hobbyist, though.
Well, so when Lana came to you for this position or this opportunity, did you feel like you weren't ready for it? But how did you get beyond like any of that? Because I know that people always feel like that with opportunities that come up in their lives, and somebody comes to them sometimes and says, do you want to do this? And they're like, gosh, I'm not really ready for that, or I don't have the experience for that. Like, did you have any of that feeling? And then if you did, how did you get beyond that feeling?
1,000%. It took me a while to get over that imposter syndrome, right? It's like, how am I here? Why am I here? Did I believe in myself? Yes, absolutely. I think anybody should believe in themselves. That's a very important part of life in general, but that was a huge step. And just going from retail to a manufacturer, you have to know at least a little bit of your entire humidor that you're selling to your consumers and having those conversations. So knowledge base wise, you have to be a mile wide and an inch deep at least. So then you have to go to the manufacturer side where you have to be an inch wide and a mile deep. But I was going to Davidoff. So a big part of that is now I am supposed to be the U.S. brand ambassador, the brand activation manager. I go into a retailer and I'm supposed to be the subject matter expert right from the get-go. But I'm walking into a room where there's been people enjoying specifically Davidoff for as long as I've been enjoying cigars altogether. I've actually had the opportunity to meet some individuals who have enjoyed a cigar with Zeno Davidoff himself back in the 80s. So when you think about those kind of hurdles you have to clear, a lot of it is just doing it. You just have to continue to show up. You continue to learn. You learn from the information you get from work, but then it's also the learning from the sales reps when you're on the road, learning from the retailers, also learning from the consumers. Everybody has information. That's one of the great things about this industry. Again, those touch points. Everybody gets to have these different experiences. They have their own stories. And so to pick up as much as you can, be a sponge, right? And so over time, I was able to learn enough where I felt more confident. I had gone down to the factory a couple times. I'd learned about fermentation and aging, the agronomy side, the rolling, the packaging. You learn all of the Davidoff crop to shop mentality. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm going into a shop and I get to have my own stories. I've been around long enough now to be able to develop my own stories and provide my own unique insight. And so it's just a matter of time and believing in yourself, believing in the process, but being a sponge and always learning, right? There's always something new to learn.
That reminds me of the in 2019 I did the Davidoff Viaje de Origin trip.
Yeah,
I think I
yeah,
pronounced it correctly.
yeah.
And they show you throughout the course of that week how from basically from seed to shelf, like how the product is brought in Davidoff's process. But I was always surprised. So coming back, it did give me a different perspective on the industry, having seen it, get to see in the factory, walking the fields, having seen the tobacco before it's rolled into a cigar and all that kind of stuff, gave me a different perspective on the industry. But I am surprised sometimes by how there are a lot of people in the industry who have not had that experience yet.
Yeah.
And I feel like retail is definitely a good precursor to the industry, but also somehow getting out to the field and seeing a factory, seeing how it works. And then if you have the opportunity, seeing a couple factories, because no factory that I've experienced yet has, operates the same way, and they do stuff completely different from one another. But I'm always surprised. I'm sure that you haven't had that experience. Bringing that into the store is super valuable to some of those retailers who maybe haven't been out in a while in the actual field in a while, but also to those consumers who haven't had the opportunity to go out to a cigar factory and see how a cigar is made.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you have the ability to do that in the first place. There's a lot of, let's say, industries out there. You can have people who are really passionate about it. You don't always get to see that. You don't get to pull back the curtain the same way. I'd say a good example of where you can do that is maybe with wines. You can go to wineries or vintners and you can see that process and then experience the product there and learn the step-by-step process. With Davidoff, fortunately, unfortunately, depends on who you are and how you look at it. The only way to go experience the Davidoff facilities outside of Santiago in the Dominican Republic is to go to Pro Cigar Fest. And that's one of the ways I kind of get people to really get excited about getting their feet in the soil. When you're actually standing in a field, for example, or if you're able to hold a handle of under fermented tobacco, it's not anywhere close to being rolled into a cigar. But when you're actually able to take a look at it, feel the texture, smell it, stick your head in that tobacco, and then if you're able to see the artisans that are the rollers and their expertise and how important that is, it completely changes your perspective. It's not just dried leaves thrown together. It's not. Never has been. This is a very, very important part of the Dominican culture, Honduran, Nicaraguan, Cuban, etc. It's a huge part of the culture. There's a lot of pride taken with the production of tobacco and the manufacturing of cigars. And to be able to understand that side of it, in my opinion, allows you to enjoy with more intent. So when you have that ability to go to Pro Cigar, the Dominican celebration of their cigar industry, you're able to get so much more out of it. But then, to your point, part of my job is to also bring that into the store when I go to the retailer and be able to say, okay, this is how we do it, this is why we do it. We want them to have as much of an authentic experience as possible, authentically Dominican, authentically Davidoff experience. So that's one of the great things about this job is I get to be able to say, I have seen this, I've done this. Maybe I won't be able to always bring a rolling table and a roller with me. We sometimes will have our rolling tour we'll do that you don't always get to do that. So if people are able to go to Pro Cigar, or if they're able to watch a documentary online, that would be, I guess, then that next kind of closest thing. But getting your foot in the mud, in the dirt, is a completely different feeling.
Yeah, and actually, like this year, I actually did the Davidoff part of Pro Cigar. I hadn't done it again since like 2019. But I hadn't done it as part of Pro Cigar, I don't think, ever, because 2019 was just a separate trip. But seeing the Schneider farm, seeing the whole process, and Hamlet was leading us around and showing us the different processes and explaining it, and seeing the factory, and it was, like I said, it's always nice because I think it helps you appreciate the product a lot more. Like you can probably, I guess, maybe somewhere like tour like a cigarette factory, but you're not gonna get the same experience. So I think people need to kind of
that's a different sport,
right?
Not a different ball game. That's a completely different sport,
right? And people don't understand that, because I know that everyone always, especially outside of cigars, they always think cigars and cigarettes are like the same thing, and it's like, no, they're not. And I don't think you can really understand that until you get out there in the field and see how a cigar is like actually made, and like all the work that goes into it. And I really like the Davidoff tour during Pro Cigar, because at least with this one, we got to see both the field and the factory in the same day. So we got to kind of see, even though it was like a quick tour that took up
probably
a lot
pretty
of the
intense.
day. Yeah, but you got to see a lot of that process, and got to see the people who are really responsible for bringing those blends to life. So I think people should, hopefully, if you have the opportunity, definitely go to Pro Cigar. Or if sometimes retailers take some customers out on these trips as well. So I think it's definitely a great opportunity to get out there and see it for yourself. So for you as a brand ambassador, I know that you're not really, I'm sure a brand ambassador is almost like you're not sales, but at the same time, you're contributing to the sales process, I guess, is a good way of seeing it. Like, especially here in 2026, are there people who have not tried Davidoff yet? And like, when you're talking to them, do you try to figure out why haven't they tried Davidoff yet? And like, what are some of the reasons, like the pain points that they give you?
Right. So correct. I am not directly associated with the commercial team, for example. They're the ones that are selling the cigars to the retailer. I guess in a sales kind of jargon or vernacular, you could say my job is to sell the lifestyle to the consumer, right? And for Davidoff in particular, I would say the majority of people who have, especially if you've been enjoying cigars for some time, have at least heard of it. That's not necessarily everybody having Davidoff before. And I'll say a lot of people will come back to me and say it's just out of my price point, right? Which everybody's financial situation is different, right? That's fair. That said, I like to kind of say that Davidoff is exclusivity for all. People think that Davidoff is exclusive in the sense of you are not allowed to have this unless you have X amount of money, which I don't believe that's the case. Obviously, I'm biased, but I don't think that's the case. My justification for purchasing a Davidoff, for example, is I might not be able to have a Davidoff cigar as my daily smoker, or my weekly smoker, or my monthly smoker. Maybe once a year when I choose to afford a Davidoff cigar. The bottom line is you're getting what you're paying for. You are getting that quality, you're getting that consistency, you're getting the innovation. For example, with our annual limited editions, you are getting what you're paying for. And it's just a matter of when the individual wants to choose to afford that. And some people have that disposable income and they can enjoy a Davidoff cigar more frequently. Okay. Sometimes somebody has to make a conscious decision to say, you know what, maybe I'm going to hold off on buying a couple of cigars today, and I'm going to put some money away and I'm going to save up because I really want to splurge on a Davidoff next week or next month or whatever the case is. That's okay as well. The bottom line is you should be able to have as perfect of a cigar as you possibly can whenever you decide to spend that money, because in my opinion as well, how much time or how much money would you spend to spend an hour with yourself? How much do you value your time? Because that is what you're investing in this cigar. It is not just the money, but it is the time in your experience in yourself. I value my time very greatly. So I am willing to maybe spend a little bit more per stick on a cigar that I'm going to enjoy for an hour, hour and a half, depending on format, maybe 2 hours. But that typically is one of the bigger, I guess, pain points or items that somebody brings up as to why they haven't tried Davidoff. But if they haven't tried Davidoff as well, then you are missing a lot. Because a lot of people also assume Davidoff is just going to be a mild, creamy, smooth, cedar forward cigar, maybe in a smaller format. And that's what the legacy from back in the day might have been. But there has been so much innovation in the Davidoff portfolio, nice little segue, to include the Davidoff Puro Dominicano, which is on shelves on April 23rd. To be able to say we have something for everybody. And it's not just certain size formats. We have a complete range in our portfolio, not only in blends, but also formats to check the box if you have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, 3 hours, mild, medium, full, and everything in between. We've got everything.
I definitely agree with most of everything that you said, and it made me think of the Davidoff mantra, which I don't know. I don't hear it as much now, but I do remember, like, when I was in the first getting into the industry in 2010, it was that time beautifully filled thing you would see on all the advertisements, anything Davidoff, and I know it's still around, and that's the mentality. But I was thinking about it like this weekend as I was trying this new cigar that you sent me to try, and someone had asked me a couple weeks ago, like, what do you think of Davidoff? And I was like, well, what do you mean? Because I never know, like, what was, like, what's their, like, what are they trying to get at? Like, and they were like, well, like, I just don't smoke Davidoff a lot. So, like, what do you think of it? And I was like, well, for me, Davidoff is, like, consistent. Like, it's consistent, and the blends are balanced. And when I say that is, there's some cigars that you start smoking, you're like, oh, this is nothing. And then you're like, get to that final third, and that's where all the strength is. And then it almost like skyrockets, and you get hit with so much nicotine that you feel sick. And then there's other cigars that are just like, they have like lots of flavor and different notes and stuff like that at the beginning, but then as it burns, it kind of mellows out. Like Davidoff for me has been like one of those consistent smokes that you can, when you think of the mantra time beautifully feel, like how I think about it, how I interpret it is like, I don't want to be bothered during that time beautifully feel. I don't want to have to think about anything. It's an easygoing smoke that, doesn't, it's not going to like knock you out or have you thinking something, completely different. And it does have different strengths in the portfolio, but for me, it's mostly been like very consistent throughout. So maybe it starts off, maybe it's so consistent for me that, that strength is like there at the beginning and at the end. So you don't, like I said, you're not hit with it at a certain point. But I do, for you, like this, how does Davidoff fit into this time beautifully feel? How does it try to complete that today? Like, what does that mean to Davidoff today? That phrase, time beautifully filled.
Well, yeah. So it kind of goes back to what I was saying with, like how much your time means to you, right? But also, it's not just that, because I was saying earlier about trying to channel my inner Zeno if I'm trying to create that personal alter ego, but that's at a specific point when I'm by myself. But even enjoying time beautifully filled when you are with other people, right? It's about elevating the time you have. Time is something that everybody wants more of, and you can't buy more of it. So make the most of the time you have by yourself with others. So that's another reason why, for example, the Anniversario line was launched. It was 1986, celebrating Zeno's 80th birthday. That is the celebration cigar for us. You're celebrating a milestone. Your first grandchild is born, you're getting married, you're getting divorced, whatever the case is, whatever your occasion for celebrating or really elevating whatever your moments are, Davidoff is the way to do that. Whatever time you have available to enjoy a cigar should be beautifully filled. And the best way to do that, in our opinion, is with Davidoff.
With Davidoff, I know you all have like white label, black label. What's the difference between these different categories?
So the white band collection, so that in order of intensity, signature, Grand Cru, Anniversario, Millennium. So those are going to be all Dominican filler, all Dominican binder, all Ecuadorian wrapper leaf. Okay. A great way to describe those are going to be, it's like if you give the same ingredients to 4 different Michelin star chefs, they can create 4 completely different final dishes, 4 different recipes. So to be able to leverage Dominican San Vicente, Dominican Piloto, Dominican Olor for our filler tobaccos in different ways, they're going to vary in their post-fermentation grades, Velado Seco, Visus, and Ligero, and then the ratios of each. That's how you're going to create this nice range in terms of the experience. For our black band collection, that's going to be Escurio, Nicaragua, Yamasa, and then as of April 23rd, Puro Dominicano will be included in there. That was to launch our Discovery series. So those white band collection, those have been around for quite some time. Back before, the signature, Grand Cru, the Anniversario, those were all created before Davidoff left Cuba and started manufacturing in the DR in 1991. They were different blends. Sometimes they had different names because they were different blends since we were leveraging Cuban tobacco, and obviously those had to be retooled once we moved. Millennium showed up in 2001, so we were already in the Dominican Republic, but there's a lot more heritage there, and those go back a lot longer, whereas with the Discovery series starting in 2013 with the launch of Nicaragua. So this was the first time we had gone outside the Dominican Republic for the primary bones of a blend since we had left Cuba. And so we launched with Nicaraguan Puro, not only a Puro, but also leveraging all 4 of the major growing regions from Nicaragua. So Condegas, León Metepe, Jalapa, they're all in it. And then we kept pushing. After 2013, we had 2015, the launch of Escurio, where now we're leveraging Brazilian tobaccos and to being able to have a hybrid that we created as well as Matafina are in that blend. And then one more time in 2016 with Yamasa. This was when the Yamasa growing region in the Dominican Republic really started to produce tobacco, and we created an entire core blend around this Yamasa tobacco. So it was really us really pushing that innovation and getting outside of our comfort zone of just those traditional Dominican flavors. So now we're adding the Puro Dominicano to this. This is going to be as the name would imply, a Dominican Puro using 7 different leaves from 6 different growing regions. So to be able to, again, just do something different and not be within those more traditional, milder, smoother types of legacy Davidoff experiences. And then on top of that, we've got Winston Churchill, that pillar. So that was something that was started back in 2005, was the original. That was when the idea came about. And that was actually Winston S. Churchill, Sir Winston's grandson, approached Davidoff to see if we would be willing to create a blend associated with Sir Winston, because at that point, it was just the Churchill size. People knew there wasn't actually a blend. So we never do anything quickly. And it was 2008 when it was first launched as the Winston Churchill by Davidoff. So some of those more legacy Davidoff enjoyers from back in the day, they might remember red band gold accents. The accents were the Churchill family crest on there. And that was a special project for the family. So that was considered the first non-Davidoff cigar to be manufactured in our factory in the DR. Then you fast forward to 2015, there's a rebranding and a reblending, and that's when the white band, the original Winston Churchill blend, was first launched. And that was really unique and important for us, because that was the first time we had ever used Mexican tobacco in one of our blends, and that's the binder leaf. So then continuing to push to continue to elevate and innovate, we came out with Late Hour in 2017. So using higher grades, so it's going to have a little bit more oomph to it, but also this was a unique blend for us because we barrel ferment our Nicaraguan filler leaf in that blend in single malt whiskey barrels for an additional 6 months on top of our traditional fermentation period. So that has been a workhorse for us ever since. So especially when somebody thinks about Davidoff, we want them to think about a complete range of experiences with our portfolio.
Yeah, and I definitely wanted to talk a little bit about, the Puro Dominicano, just because I know that people are going to be seeing it in stores a lot. Like I said, late April, they're going to be seeing probably a lot about it at the upcoming trade show.
Even already on social media.
I was about to say, they're seeing people like me post about it already. So I have like the little box here that you sent, and like the remaining cigars that I have here. So like, I think you hear about Nicaraguan puros a lot. You don't hear about Dominican puros as much, but I think you're starting to see a little bit more of them come out. So does it take a bit more time to figure out like a Puro Dominican blend than it does like a Nicaraguan blend, or what? This seems like a kind of a big deal.
It's a huge deal, not only because it is a Dominican Puro, and yes, Dominican Puros are not the easiest thing to do in the world, especially to get them done in a consistent fashion the way Davidoff does, but also because it's a big deal because this is the first core line we have launched since 2017 with the Late Hour, and the first time we've added a blend to the Black Band collection since Yamasa in 2016. So I think one of the big things for us as Davidoff was people know us a lot of times for our limited editions. That's a big deal within the industry. And while people very much enjoy those, there's been, I won't say an outcry, but there's definitely been a yearning for Davidoff to come out with something new to the core portfolio. So, as I said earlier, we don't do anything quickly. We take our time. We want to make sure we do it right. And the Pure Dominicano is how we do that. And this is a great blend because this is actually the most complex blend we have within the Black Band collection to date. And a part of that is to leverage so many different growing regions throughout the Dominican Republic. And each one of those growing regions, they do have these very unique characteristics. So to be able to put all these things together and make them work is a very difficult thing to do. But we have, see if I remember them all in order. Martin Garcia. We have Dominican Piloto, the growing region Piloto. We have Mao, Navarrete, Villa Gonzalez, and Yamasa all in this particular cigar. So there's a lot going on. But to do something like this, the Davidoff way, is what I think is most special, because when you talk about the blending philosophy behind Davidoff, you're talking about balance. You're talking about nuance. Items you brought up early on in this episode, like that balance of not having something that's going to completely kick me in the teeth early and then die down, or something that's going to start off super, super mild and I'm wondering what's going on, and then all of a sudden, boom, there it is. And it's overwhelming at that point. You have to have this very nice general progression throughout. And I think one of the great things about this blend is this is coming out in 3 smaller-ish ring gauge sizes, which helps along with that general progression. So there's going to be a short Robusto, there's going to be the Corona Larga, and then this Perfecto. That short Robusto is going to be very similar to the Millennium Short Robusto. So it's 4 1/2 by 52 ring gauge. The Dominicano Short Robusto, 4 1/2 by 52. The Corona Larga is going to be a 5 7/8 by 44 ring gauge. That's a completely new size for us. That is going to be, in terms of storyline, very attached to the Dominican Republic, because 5 7/8 inches, for those of us who are not familiar with the centimeters, that's 14.92 centimeters. 1492, the same year Christopher Columbus discovered the New World. And then 44 ring gauge references 1844, which is when the DR gained its independence from Spain. And then on top of that, you have the Perfecto, which is a 5 1/2 by 50. For me, this is such an incredible size. It is a little bit shorter, a little bit different than the Nicaragua Diadema. But there's something nostalgic. Even when you just look at the cigar, there's something very nostalgic to this format. And I particularly love a figurado. So I like having that change in your ring gauge throughout. So you get a little bit of extra built-in complexity just from the construction, not just everything the tobacco itself is providing. So this one is my particular favorite so far, but I also find I like to jump around in terms of not only blends, but also formats. Sometimes I'll be on a Corona kick, sometimes I'll be on a Toro kick and jumping around. But this one right from the beginning has really grabbed my attention. But each one of these cigars is going to be very special for whoever picks one up.
And for those people who are really into like flavor profiles and such, and they could pick out all the notes, I cannot. How would you describe like the flavor of the cigar and the strength?
Yeah, again, because of its complexity, you're going to get a lot of everything. The more predominant notes are going to be a little bit on the creamier and spicier side. Nothing too overt. Again, a lot of balance and nuance with the Davidoff blend, but you will get some really nice baking spice, also some pepper spices in there, but you will get sweetness. You will get some chocolate. You will get some earthiness to it. You will have a little bit of floral qualities to it. So as you go through, you're going to be getting completely different flavors all the way through. And it's something that's really, really exciting. But I don't want people to feel like you have to be, like, for example, myself, a complete tobacco geek and a cigar nerd, and be able to sit here and say, oh, well, I get this, and this. Bottom line, for any cigar you enjoy, do you like it? I can guarantee you will enjoy the Pure Dominicano. but you don't feel like if you are missing out on any of the flavors that you can't appreciate this cigar. You're going to be able to enjoy it no matter what. In this case, I haven't been going to it, but right now I'm enjoying a little bit of Dominican rum along with it. Great from a pairing standpoint. This one is a little bit on the sweeter side, so it complements kind of the spicier aspects of it. One of the things I'll kind of give a little bit of a preview to the activation I'll be doing throughout this year, and this goes incredibly well with what you were talking about bringing the Dominican Republic or the factory to the retailers and to the consumers. So with Viaje El Origen that you attended in 2019, I don't know if you were able to do it when you went to Finca Schneider during Pro Cigar this year, but did you have the hot chocolate by chance?
No.
Oh, man. So one of the things we do during Viaje is we actually have some ladies making Dominican hot chocolate for us, and we start the day with cigars and this hot chocolate. So you're actually at Finca Schneider. You're in the middle of the field. You're looking out across the tobacco fields. You have the red curing barns in the background. You have the mountains of the northern range of the Cibao Valley, and you're sitting there with cigars and enjoying this hot chocolate. That's actually one of the things that I'll be doing for the activation program this year for Pure Dominicano. We'll be making some drinking chocolate to enjoy, not necessarily as a pairing, but just as an accompaniment to the event we'll be doing. So just something that's a little outside the box. It doesn't have to be rum or whiskey every time you do a pairing with a cigar or have something with a cigar. It can be a little bit different. So this year we'll do that drinking chocolate, and it actually goes incredibly well with the Pure Dominicano.
And I think that's a good way to kind of segue into the experiences part, because I've been in the industry for a while now. And in 2010, with Davidoff, it was about, like you said, introducing these new cigar lines like the Yamasa, the Escurio. I remember the big fanfare with each one of those. So I feel very old at this point. But I remember the big fanfare, the big campaigns for those. But I also remember going to a trade show, and I don't remember what year it was. It may have been 2018, 2019. And Davidoff saying, we're going to start focusing on the experiences now, because like we'll have new releases now and then, but we have like a very strong portfolio, and we really want to focus on like experiences. Can you talk about a little bit how experiences, especially for retailers that are watching and they're wondering, like, how do I get more consumers kind of hip to, coming in, and the importance of the experience to the cigar world today? Because I feel like we're kind of losing that a little bit, and because when I say experience, I'm not talking about like a store event, like buy one, get one free, or buy this and you'll get some swag or whatever. When Davidoff says experiences, I mean, you all do like pairing, like special drink pairings. You do with the chef series. It's like different food pairings. You'll have events and special places that really make you go, oh, remember when we were, here or there, or, and we saw all this stuff going on. Can you just talk about the importance of the experience to the cigar world?
The two most important words I feel like you said just now were remember when. If you go to a store, retailer, cigar bar, whatever the case is, and XYZ retailer is having ABC manufacturer show up, buy 5, get a cutter, buy 10, get a lighter, buy 20, get an ashtray. How many people say, remember when I bought 5 cigars and I got this cutter? I bought a box and I got this ashtray. To me, as a manufacturer, and then also importantly as a retailer, you're not able to really build brand loyalty. You're not creating a connection. And that's what this industry is. It's about connecting people. It can be about connecting with yourself, again, when you're enjoying a cigar by yourself. But a lot of times with that social aspect, connecting with the retailer, connecting with different consumers, it's about connections. And if you are doing a sales event like that, you're just connecting that individual to chasing the next deal. So it doesn't matter what brand is showing up, it's just that next deal. We had the mentality of we want to create an experience. We want people to say, oh, I remember when so and so from Davidoff showed up. It was the sales rep, it was the brand ambassador, it was somebody else from the front office, the president, whoever it was. And this is what I got to experience. And we ended up having a great conversation, and we had amazing food and we had amazing drinks. And I learned, a big part of it is the education piece. I learned XYZ from that. And I can go back and I can remember it was the Davidoff event, but it could be information that I'm going to use whenever I'm enjoying a cigar. For example, last year, one of the really cool events I got to do was our Winston Churchill tea pairing. Again, tea, not something people necessarily associate with a cigar pairing, but it was our white band Winston Churchill Toro to go along with some really incredible Earl Grey tea. And so part of that experience was not only the pairing itself, but the tea takes time. You can't we didn't just pour tea and you're drinking it right away. Everybody got their own tea sachets, tea bags. Usually I don't try to say that, but tea sachets. And we had a hot water heater and everybody had their hot water. And I was coaching everybody through the experience. And I said, okay, everybody tea in. So everybody started their tea steeping at the same time, which for that Earl Grey tea took about 4.5 to 5 minutes to do the proper amount of time. So during that time, I took matches and taught everybody proper way to toast and light your cigar with matches. And it was a 3-match lighting technique that I learned from a video from Gordon Mott. And it was actually funny because he recorded that video in our Madison Avenue store back in the day. It was some time ago, but still very relevant. But also so many people don't necessarily know how to or have the patience for lighting their cigar with matches. But once I walked everybody through the process, taught them how to do that, and actually we cut the cigar last. We took 3 matches, toasted the cigar, and then cut the cigar, and then took our first draw as that virgin puff. It was that first time smoke had passed through the cigar and engaged with the rest of the tobacco. And that took about 4.5 to 5 minutes. So you take that first draw. After your ritual is done, you take that first draw. And oh yeah, by the way, now my tea's ready. So then we got into the actual pairing after the fact. But you don't necessarily have to do that lighting ritual with only a Davidoff cigar. That is something somebody can put in their toolbox and their ammo belt and use any time they enjoy a cigar. And I've actually had a lot of people say I felt there was a difference. It wasn't just anecdotal. It wasn't my mind telling me that it's different or better. I actually experienced the cigar in a different way, and I got more out of it. And then we had this incredible tea, and it actually goes to that experience to the point where somebody, hopefully, if I did my job right, years from now, they will say, hey, do you remember when? So I think that's one of the biggest things is creating that. You almost create a nostalgic tie to whatever that experience is, because that's what we remember experiences, not deals.
Yeah, and it's the emotions attached to those experiences that make them even more memorable. So,
Correct.
I love that about Davidoff and what you all do. The fact that it's experience, based and focus, and even like the retailers that carry Davidoff products. Like when I'm sitting here going through my Rolodex of retailers that I know are Davidoff appointed merchants, each of them are really good at the experience thing. Like none of them are just like do like these like lame, just come in and we're gonna have like a rep and I'm gonna sit in the back and you're gonna, they're gonna do the sales. It's usually like a big event and it's something like on top of that to make it even more memorable.
Yeah, and there is something to be said for that. I agree with that, because Davidoff is not a brand you're just able to get as a
Mm-hmm.
you have to work. You have to work hard, and it's going to take some time for the conversation to be had to see if you are able to get Davidoff in your store. You have to become an account with us. You have to have Avo, Camacho, Zeno. You have to activate properly. You have to prove you're able to build brands and you're able to create a customer base for us to be able to say, okay, well, now let's have the conversation. Do we think this is a good spot for an appointed merchant? And it's not always going to be a yes to that, right? But part of that exclusivity for all, I mean, you have to be able to understand there is value to exclusivity. And so if you find an appointed merchant, that means they have proven themselves to do this, right? So you know that that is going to be a quality tobacconist, and it is worth going into that shop and creating the relationship with the people behind the register, with the manager, with the owner, whoever the case is, and be able to say, you know what? There's trust here. There's friendship here. There's a relationship here. And then to be able to enjoy your Davidoff cigars in the proper environment, you know that product is going to be stored properly. You know you're going to be able to enjoy it there. You're able to take it home, and it's going to be exactly what you're expecting it to be. That's why we say it is a crop to shop mentality. That is our vertical or integration process. It is not crop to warehouse. Once that product leaves the warehouse, there still has to be some sort of accountability and maintenance of that product and brand identity to be able to say, okay, this is exactly what we had in our mind when we were going through our innovation. And that is exactly what the consumer is going to experience at the end of the day.
Awesome. So at this point of the interview, I usually kind of draw things to a close with
Okay.
two basic questions.
Mm-hmm.
First of those questions is, do you have a philosophy that you live or work by that you could share with us?
Life is 20% what happens to you, 80% how you react to it. That has been a very deeply seated mantra of mine for some time, and I feel like it has gotten me very far. So far, it hasn't let me down yet. Everybody has things going on because of decisions they make, and there's consequences to those decisions. Sometimes it's outside influences and you have no control over it, and it is what it is. The only thing you can control is how to react to the scenarios and situations put in front of you. You can choose to allow something to crush you and you end up crumbling, and there's a more negative outcome. And sometimes you can say, you know what, and I'll parlay this into a saying my mom used to tell me when I was a kid, which I had no appreciation for then. Now I definitely understand it. But that is, when you lose, don't lose the lesson. So to be able to take a difficult scenario and say, I'm going to use this as a learning opportunity and be able to grow from this and become better. And that, I would say those two things have been really, really deep seated in me for a long time that I live by.
The final question for this part of the interview is, I want you to finish this sentence. Alex Weghorn is
Blessed. Absolutely blessed. I tell you what, man, especially because of the cigar. I very frequently say I will forever be indebted to the cigar for so many of the friendships and the relationships that I've developed over my life. And that could be social and personal. It could be from a networking standpoint. The amount of networking that happens in retailers, or just because of people you've met at a retailer and you develop these relationships after the fact, just it permeates every single level of your life. And I feel like I've done as good of a job as I can up to this point to be able to acknowledge that the cigar has actually done so much for me, which is another reason why I feel like I'm so passionate about this industry, because I want that for others as well. Because people don't understand, again, it's not just tobacco that's thrown together. It's all the many hands for Davidoff, the 300 hands that go into producing it, but it's also the experiences and the friendships and the networking and the opportunities that come after the fact once you have the cigar in your hand and you start to enjoy it. And then to get a little bit more romantic and philosophical about it, it's the ability to sit down by yourself. This will always be your friend, no matter what. You can sit down by yourself. You always are in good company when you have a cigar in your hand. And to be able to sit down and kind of process things, the ideas you come up with, it could be a creative outlet. It could be the ability to just unwind, de-stress. Stress is such a big thing in everybody's lives nowadays. To be able to take a step back and calm down and be able to say, you know what, I'm not going to let anything bother me for the next hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. I'm just going to sit here and enjoy my cigar. There's a lot to be said for having an experience like that. And we're blessed enough to be able to do that on a regular basis in such an incredible industry.
I want to say amen.
Yeah.
I felt like the most appropriate response to that. But I want to thank you for coming on the show. And before we go, I want you to kind of give people, if they want more information on Davidoff, what social media should they go to? What website? Can you share that for those people who may not be watching, so they don't see what's on the screen? Can you just share to like what they need to do to keep up with Davidoff?
Yeah, so if you're going to the Davidoff website, that's us.davidoffgeneva.com. You'll be able to get all sorts of information on all of our products there. If you're active on the social media platforms, just look up Davidoff Cigars, Facebook, Instagram. We're very active. I do like to try to provide a little bit more insight into different experiences that I get to share as well. So if you do choose to give me a follow, Instagram, that's Alexionado. So my name, Alex with aficionado, ALEXCIONADO. But those are the best way to kind of keep tabs on what's going on with Davidoff and myself. And you can also get information about the new things we have coming up, again, with PCA and the Pure Dominicano launch. But I will say, keep your eyes open to that website and to the some of our other brand Instagrams as well and Facebook accounts, because Davidoff is having a big year this year at PCA. It's not just Pure Dominicano. We have a couple other things to show off. We have been very, very active, and it's going to be a really exciting PCA this year.
I can't wait to see you and the Davidoff team at PCA in just a couple weeks. Hard to believe that we're here again. Like, here's another trade show.
It doesn't believe tomorrow is April. Like,
I know. It's like,
where did Q1 go?
But thank you for coming on the show today. Like, I really did enjoy talking to you and learning more about you and just the Davidoff brand. It's been a while since we have anyone for Davidoff on here, so we'll have to have you back on after, all these big reveals at the trade show to talk about, some of the other things, and maybe have you kind of lead people in their own, some type of experience that they can have at home. If they,
that'd be awesome. Yeah.
So
give me a follow. We'll be able to do more through here. Also, make sure to follow La Reem. He's our Camacho brand ambassador. Garrison Davis, he's our Avo brand ambassador. We're all gonna be very, very active on social media at PCA, doing activations at retailers. So anytime you see Davidoff or any of the Davidoff family events coming up, make sure you take some time out of your schedule and go see them, because they're going to be pretty exciting.
Great. So you sit tight, Alex, because I have a couple more things to do. But for those of you who are watching or listening, thank you for tuning in today. Leave a comment on whatever platform you're watching this on, and give us a follow. Leave feedback. I tell people it could be good feedback, it could be negative feedback. Any feedback is always helpful feedback at the end of the day. So enjoy all that. If you want to see any more of this interview or any other the other interviews that we've done in the past, you can see all the past episodes of Deep Cuts on youtube.com/deepcutslive. And until next time.